Hey, what's up, everyone? Maury Croson here, and today we're going to be going over everything you need to run a 4.55 40-yard dash. I know many of you guys are looking to improve your 40 going into the off season, just ended the season, and it's time to get faster. It's time to get recruited, get noticed, and in order to do that, for many of you guys, we need to get specific on how you can improve the 40. So in this video, we're going to be going in depth into your start, into the drive phase, your setup, your top end speed, give you some drills, give you some exercises, give you some more clarity into what you can use, what type of workouts to do, what type of drills you could do, what type of apps you could use. Really just give you as much information. My goal of this video will be to really make it so you could walk away and say, I got everything I need to run a 4.55. Now, from this, you'll probably need some type of facility to work out of. So many of you guys probably have a gym that you have access to, or a field, park, whatever the case may be. You're going to need to utilize that. I also think having a smartphone is going to be important to make it so you can video yourself and get specific into what you need to work on. So there is going to be some commitment on your end that's going to be necessary in order for you to get the results that you're looking for. If it's something that really matters to you, running a faster 40, it's going to be simple, right? The idea of this video, the information should be simple, should be practical, should be things that you can use, but it's going to take hard work. It's going to take discipline. It's going to take effort. I would sit down, I would write out some of the things that can get in your way, some distractions that might get in the way, some of the things that could end up holding you back, just to make it clear on what you're willing to give up in the next 4 to 6 months to make it so then you can run faster. Just to give a quick background story on me and why I can help you out here with your 40-yard dash. I was a quarterback in high school, played for my dad, ended up transitioning to receiver in college, and was just one of those guys that was always the smart receiver, could run great routes, could catch the ball, could get open, but that was always my weakness, was the speed. Like, oh, if you could only get faster, then you would be what would be a complete receiver. And fast forward 10 years, and now I've really dived into the science and the specifics of how to run a faster 40, or how to just be faster in general. And now, I mean, I'm 33 years old, and I'm still one of the fastest players in the local flag teams that I work with. Now I'm almost more of the speed threat. Now people are like, oh, all he can do is run deep. All he has is speed. So I've went from being a great route runner and a possession receiver now to being a speed threat, running 4.5. I ran 4.4 a couple years ago, 4.38. I made a video on it if you guys want to check that out. I've gotten into 23 miles an hour. I run on the treadmill in 20 miles an hour all the time, a curved treadmill in the 20s. And so I have taught myself how to improve my speed. I think I can teach you. I've taught thousands of other athletes, both within schools, programs, club teams, and also individual clients, online clients, a wide range of different types of people. And all of them have utilized, including myself, this system to make it so they're able to get faster. And the reason this system works is because I make it very, very specific into what are the numbers that it's going to take in order to actually get the results that you're looking for. I start off with looking at your first 10 yards. And I mean, depending on your height, there could be different degrees of variability, and we'll get more into that as we go through the video. But within your first 10 yards, you should be able to accomplish that in 7 steps. You should be able to accomplish your first 20 yards in 12 steps. Okay, so if you're counting the steps from the first, you're set up in a 3-point stance, about to run the 40-yard dash, you've taken 12 steps, you should be at 20 yards. And then that last 20 yards, or each 10 yard, you should be covering that in about 8 steps, maybe 8.5 steps. So in total, the entire 40 should be at the most 20.5 steps. If you're able to do that, you should be able to get into at least a respectable time. You might not necessarily run 4.55. We'll get more into some of the numbers behind where you should be at each one of those, but that just gives you an idea of how we're looking at this. It's a very systematic approach into this, and that's why I say 4.55, and I'll get more in depth into why that is the time. You know, it's not 4.60, it's not 4.58, it's not 4.50, it's 4.55, and it's because some of the numbers that it will take to get there. Obviously, if you run 4.57 or if you run 4.53, you know, hopefully you wouldn't be too upset with that, especially for some of you guys that might be running 4.8 or 5 seconds, this will really help you in understanding what it is that you need to do in order to improve the speed. Now, what we're going to do here first is we're going to take a look at the setup, because I do think the setup ends up being an important part of how well you're able to run the 40. So we have a couple different guys here. I like how Garrett Wilson runs and accelerates. So I'm using him as one of the examples, and I'm using Xavier Worthy as the other example. I know both of those guys ran significantly lower than 4.5. These guys are very technically sound, and they're also older. I think a lot of you guys are probably watching this that are maybe 15, 17, I mean, maybe even 20, but these guys are at the top level. They have the top level training, right? We had Xavier Worthy at Texas after he ran this, one of the best facilities in the nation, as well as Ohio State for some of the best training, some of the best agents, some of the best people behind them to make it so they can get to the highest level of performance. And so if you're watching this YouTube video, I'm assuming you don't have access to all the things that they had. And so you're not going to be able to utilize that same level of elite efficiency. But with this information, you will at least get to what would be a lot better, which is 4.55, and still be able to at least get on the radar for a lot of teams, for a lot of people, especially if you are in high school. So we want to be able to start off in a position where we have this first heel pretty high up. There's a wide variety of different places where you could have that back foot. I've actually had more success with people having that back foot a little bit further back, surprisingly so, where the front foot, and there's also a lot of variability that could happen there, but we do want to have a bend. We do want to have that heel up, and I think it's important that you have the hips above the head. I know Garrett Wilson is a little bit more flat here. I like where Xavier Worthy's at, but I do also think it's good to see a different variety of athletes here, so then we can understand what are some things that we can implement within our own sprinting. From the front, we can see that Xavier Worthy, his knees are both very close together. So what can typically happen is if we get too bunched up here or get both of the feet too close to the line, then you'll end up having your knees too wide. So we want to be in a position where we're very comfortable here and the knees are not necessarily touching, but they're kind of close. I also think you should have more weight, about 90% of your weight on the front foot. I also think that you should have most of your weight towards like the inside part of this foot, kind of on like the toe, getting ready to push off. This back hand should be tucked right up to your hip. This hand should be a little bit wider than the shoulder, right? Or the fingers should be a little bit wider than the shoulder. And then the first action, so this is just some general things within the setup that we want to be adequate with. You can test it out a little bit. You can, again, I would play with this back foot position, kind of see where you're at with the 10-yard flies, what type of numbers that you get, or the 10-yard starts to see what you get to, and then make adjustments based off of that. But from here, what we want to be able to do, the first action that we want to have is going to be dropping this front knee, right? So you can see that drop in the front knee, drive that back knee straight up and through as you are trying to get your shoulders out the best that you can, and you're trying to get your foot out the best that you can. So you're thinking outwards with this action, not upwards. So then we could land as much towards the front part of the foot as possible. We'll take a look at Xavier Worthy as well. So you could see knees coming straight, maybe even slightly inwards. We could see that first movement with that front knee, how he's really dropping that front knee down, and he's really driving outward with the elbow, with the shoulders, and with the foot to make it so he's landing as much towards the front part of the foot as possible. And that, I think, is a great cue that you should understand with that acceleration is you're trying to get your shoulders out. Okay, you're trying to get the shoulders out in front. I also think a great cue is that we're trying to push off of the ground. Okay, about 70% of the time, I want to say it was 70, maybe 80% of the time, somewhere in there, when the elite starters are accelerating, they're on the ground. So when you're at top speed, there's a lot more time, right? I don't know the exact number, but there's a lot more time with both feet off the ground. You're floating a little bit more, we could say. But when you're accelerating, there's almost no time with your foot off the ground. As soon as one foot comes off, the other one's striking the ground because you're trying to push out there. So you don't want to be spending a lot of time with the feet off the ground. Now, I am going to get specific into the timing here, the numbers here, because I think that it's important for you to understand where you you should be when it comes to your acceleration. And so what I mean by that is how long it should take for this back foot to come off the ground. So we're looking at the timestamp. It goes from 0.26, and then he's touching back on the ground. And according to my notes here, it takes him 0.23 seconds to strike the ground. I think somewhere in that 2.3 range, 2.3 could be up to 2.6 is a good number to reach for. Okay, so you want to be very quick in how fast that foot comes off the ground. So you're going to be looking at this, and I use OnForm. That's the name of this app. It's called OnForm. If you guys sign up for our program, you get access to OnForm, so you can utilize it in your understanding of the 40 and what your time should look like. I do think that you could sign up and get free access to it as well. I'll have a link down below to make it so you guys could easily access it. There are different apps out there that could do a lot of the same type of stuff, but the key thing is you'd want to be able to track to the hundredths, to me, at least to the tenths, right? So you could see this one actually gets to the thousandth. You don't necessarily need to have the thousand. They didn't have that when I first started using this. These are videos that are recorded, and so I think the frame rate is about 30 frames per second here. Typically, I'm shooting at about, I think, up to 120 frames per second with OnForm, but you'd want to get something that's in that same type of range. 2-3 seconds is going to be the first step, and then the amount of time that you want to be at is going to be about 0.17 seconds with that foot on the ground. So as soon as his foot hits, you want to be thinking about immediately pushing right back off. So at 4.9 by 6.6, he's towing off or about to tow off there. Okay, so it's about 0.17 seconds or 0.4 seconds in total. And then with the other foot, it's off the ground for about 0.3 seconds. And again, this is why this system should work, is because we're getting very specific into what you need to be doing. So 0.3 seconds, you towed off at 0.43, he hit the ground at 0.73, and then he should be off the ground in about, again, 0.16 seconds. And so 0.89, so yeah, right about 0.16 is going to be when he is off the ground. So 0.30, how much time he spent off the ground, 0.16 is what he spent on the ground there. And these guys are both very similar. I know that some of this stuff might be a little monotonous, it might get a little bit boring, but just stay with me here. We're going to get into some more things that are going to continue to help you. This is just going to be something that makes it so it's a little more objective for you to be able to improve your sprinting. And I know, again, it's not necessarily the most exciting video, but I want to be able to make it so it's very clear how you're going to get these results. So again, with the next step, we'd want that to be 0.30 time off the ground, 0.17 time on the ground. So these numbers are the time on the ground, the circles, and I'm going to box the numbers of the time that your foot is in the air, how you're transitioning forward. So this one, we'd be looking at 0.89. This would be what an example of what the box numbers would be, okay, into 0.19. So again, another 0.30, right? This is going to be a box here. This is going to be a circle. This is going to be a box, okay? This is for him, it's going to be his right leg, okay? But it's on our left side, obviously. And then this one's going to be on his left leg, but it's on our right side. So 0.30, 0.16, 0.30 again, hits the ground, 1.9, and then he's back off at about 1.4, okay? Again, looking at that timestamp, 0.14, okay? So these are about what you want to be looking for in terms of how much time. Now, it doesn't have to be perfect. With Garrett Wilson, he's a little bit different. He's 0.23, which would be the same, and then he's 0.33, so it's a little bit longer with his foot off the ground on his left side. He's 0.20 with his first foot contact, again, a little bit longer, but he's 0.13 with his left foot contact, so that's a little bit shorter, right? 1.6 in comparison to Garrett Wilson, which was 1.3, and then from there, they're the same, 0.30, 0.30, 0.17, 0.14, sorry, in terms of how much time they spent on the ground. Now, there are times when they ran the first 10, we have Garrett Wilson, he ran 1.53, 10 yards, and he ran it in about, so we're going to look at the steps, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and a half. Okay, about 6.5 steps to be able to to get there. 7 steps, he was closer to probably 11 yards. Okay, at 6 steps, he was about at 9. And that's why you can see why his acceleration, I really like his acceleration, because you can see how high he gets the knees, how well he's able to cover distance really quickly. Another thing you could think about is getting 4 steps in 5 yards. Okay, and this one, some of these are kind of like non-negotiable, right? So you can get 6.5 steps, okay, if you have some of these times down. Okay, so if you are taking, instead of 0.20 seconds, right, or with your foot off the ground, you're taking 0.3 seconds, or when your foot's hitting the ground, instead of 0.20 or 0.17, you're at closer to 0.3 or 0.25. You know, these are things that you want to say, okay, this is going to be slowing me down. I got to get better at this. So that's why we want to be able to see this, is so that then objectively we can understand how can we get better? How can we improve? And the start ends up being such an important thing, because if you don't run that first 10 or that first 20 very well, then it almost guarantees your failure. So 153 in the first 10, and Xavier Worthy ran 149 in the first 10, which is these are great times, right? That's a really, really good time. And let's see where he was at with his steps. 1, 3, 4, 5, 6. So at 6 steps, he's not at 10 yards. Okay, he's maybe closer to about 11 yards at 7 steps. That's why I say we're not talking about running 4.22, fast as ever, 4.3. We're talking about running 4.55. And so if you can get it in 7 steps, that's going to still be difficult, but it will still give you the opportunity to be quick. These guys are doing a great job of being long and also being quick. The amount of distance that they're covering in 6 steps and how fast they're able to do it is absolutely insane, which is why, again, we're using them as examples, so then we can try to get closer to that. Let's just repeat what the best are doing, and maybe not do it as high of a level. These guys are at the best shape in their life, but we could at least start to replicate it, get closer, get on track to be able to do that. Especially for many of you guys, this is going to be a quick off season. You don't have very much time. We have to be able to get quick and fast as possible. So let's be very clear on how we're going to be able to get there. Okay, we're at 10 yards, 149, 153 here. They don't actually have exactly what Xavier Worthy was able to get here. I'm estimating it's going to be about from the 10 to the 20 in about 0.97, which is insanely fast. What Garrett Wilson did was 103, which is also extremely fast. Okay, so that's 256. And then at the 20, we're going to estimate he was about 246. Okay, so about a tenth of a second faster. Now, for you, what we're going to try to get, the goal is going to be a 158 from 0 to 10. Okay, 158. And some of you guys might be like, oh, yeah, I've ran 158, 0 to 10. Well, we need you to run 158 every time. Not one time, not 3 times. We need to make it so you're always getting 158. We want you to be getting 158 so often that you can't not get 158. That's going to be the goal. So you're so consistently getting 158 that you get it every single time. If not, you get faster. Okay, not every once in a while I do get 158, so therefore I can run for 158. Hopefully, when I'm actually running the 40, I can get that time. Okay, and then from the 10 to 20, the goal is going to be to run a 107. Still very fast, 107. So from 0 to 20, the time wants to be 265. That's the goal, is to get to 265, 0 to 20. Okay. Now, you don't have to get 158 and then 107 to get 265, obviously. You can get 160 and then 105. You can get 155 and 110. Okay, the point is, let's at least get to 265. Okay, we're trying to run 4.55. We need you to get to 2.65, 0 to 20. That's a very difficult thing to do. Best way to be able to do that is going to be about 12 steps. Okay, we went into what you want to be getting into the foot contact time, and what that should kind of look like. Essentially, what you want to be able to maintain after those first 4 steps is you want to be able to maintain about 0.3 seconds with your foot off of the ground. Okay, this is called your transition time. Okay, so this is a little bit later. He's at 7.6 right here, and then he's touching back down at about 03, so he's about 0.33. Okay, so you could be a little bit longer. I would say you don't want to be much longer than 3.5, and then you don't want to be any shorter than 3.0. But somewhere in there ends up being where you want to be. So if you're not getting enough distance per step and you're closer to 3.0, then you definitely need to be reaching more. If you are getting not enough distance per step, but you're getting closer to 3.5, then there's just some inefficiency that's happening in your leg cycle that we have to be able to really get specific on. So that's where, some of this stuff ends up being things you can get from our training program. And we will offer that as a thing to be able to really get some more specific access into drills and exercises and things that can be specific to you. I am going to be obviously giving you a ton of free things here to be able to help you out, but we do want to be able to just be transparent in that there are things that you can get that will make it just that much easier for you to accomplish the goals here. Between 0.35 to 0.30 with the foot off of the ground, and then about 0.1 or under is going to be the amount of time spent on the ground. So you can see 2098, and then he's off the ground at 2198. So that was 0.1 exactly. It might have even been a little bit under 0.1 based off of where he's at there. So that is where you want to be in terms of how much time you're spending on the ground, your foot contact time, and then your foot off of the ground about 0.30, 0.35 at the most. If you're at 0.33, that's probably about optimal when it comes to how much time you should be spending off the ground. As you get to your top speed, closer to like 20 yards and past, now we want to be pretty similar in terms of how much time our foot's spending off the ground. So he's 0.16 when his foot hits the ground, transitions off at again about 0.26, maybe a little bit longer than 2.6, but definitely under, not 0.12, right? So about 0.1 is still going to be his foot contact time. We're going to go with 2.6 for this, just so then we can see where he hits the ground. So he hits the ground at 3.60, 2.6, 30. So he's at 0.34 in terms of how much time he's spending off the ground. So about 0.1 foot on the ground, about 0.34 off the ground. So he's still maintaining about that same level. Again, that's why I went into the start, because the numbers are a little bit different. Once you get into your drive phase, your top end speed, now you are going to be within a pretty general range here. And this is where it's important to get specific on the distance that we're covering, the amount of time we're spending off the ground, right? 0.34, 0.1, how much time we're spending on the ground. Biggest thing that many of you guys are going to struggle with is going to be that distance per step, as well as matching it with the effective turnover speed or how fast the leg's cycling. So just to get again into the numbers here with Garrett Wilson, I think he's only like 5'11", so he's about 5'11", 6 foot. So that's 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, 11. So he actually got to 20 yards and 11 steps, which is crazy. 1, 2, 3, 4. So that now he's at 30 yards and 4 steps. 1, 2, 3, 4 gets 40. So he's basically 19 and a half. Okay, in terms of his steps, again, that's 4.3 time. Okay, and that's essentially what you can guarantee. That's why I say 20 and a half is a good number here, because you're going to add on some time based off how many steps it's going to take you, or how many additional steps it ends up taking you. So you could probably go about 0.2, maybe even 0.3, depending on the speed, but about 0.2, 0.2 and a half for every additional step that you take. Okay, so we'll look at him. We're going to look at Xavier Worthy. Again, 1, 3, 5, 6, 7, 9, 11. Passed it. 13, 15, 17, 19. He's right on it at 19. Okay, to run 4.2. I want to say he's probably about the same height as Garrett Wilson. Yeah, Xavier Worthy is also 5'11", so about the same. Again, so this is what makes it really impressive. At 5'11", running 19 steps, that's really, really difficult to do, even if you're 6 foot or 6'1". So if you are taller, the idea would be you should be able to cover more distance. I can guarantee you for a lot of you guys, it's going to be difficult to get to that distance. So again, 20 and a half is going to be, to me, a good step. I was just working with a guy the other day on the 40. He's probably 6'1", and he was taking 22 steps to run the 40, and he was at about 5 seconds. And so as you can start to get rid of those steps, okay, so as he gets down to 20 steps, if you're averaging about 0.25 for every step, then that's going to get him, into that closer to 4 or 5 range. Okay. And these are kind of guesstimates, but it at least gives you a more clear understanding, a more clear path on what you need to do. I think it's important to be able to break this up into some very simplistic standards of what we need to be able to get to. So it's hard to be able to accomplish this when you just look at the entire 40 and say, oh, I need to go from, let's say, 4.9 to 4.5. Okay. And I'm just going to run. I'm going to do all these different things. I'm going to try to get that happen, make that happen. But it's a lot more simple if you're saying, okay, the reason I run 4.9 is because I'm taking, let's just say 22 steps to make it easier, and I need to get down to 20 steps. How can I get rid of some of these steps? Well, my first 10 yards, I'm taking 7.5 steps. I'm not getting to my first 10 yards in, the right amount of steps. And then I get to 20 yards in 13 steps. And then I run the last 20 in 9 steps. Okay. Instead of 8 steps, takes 9 steps. So 4.5 per 10 yards. Now that is going to be 22 steps. So just being a little bit off with your step count, right? Only 7.5 here, 13 at 20, 9 from 20 to 40. So now you're at 22 total steps. That little bit of difference might not seem like a lot. There's not a big difference between 4.9 seconds and 4.5 seconds. I mean, in terms of speed, in terms of how fast you're running, there's a huge difference in what that is. But in terms of how fast that happens, 4/10 of a second, that happens so quick you can hardly even fathom it. And so you really have to be able to be specific on what it is that you need to be able to do and really break it down in order to make it so you can really excel in some of these things. I hope you've enjoyed the information in this video so far. We are going to end it as of now, but you can get free access to the video if you just scroll down into the description and click the link down below, sign up, and you will get free access. You'll also get access to a workout plan, more drills, more exercises, the rest of this video, which goes more in depth into your top speed, some of the things that you need to accomplish within the miles per hour, and it just gives you a better understanding of what you need to do in order to run that 4.55 40-yard dash. So if you want to see the rest of the video, if you want to get access to the drills, the workouts, everything you need, go ahead and scroll down. It's all free. Just go ahead and click that down below, enter your email, your name, everything like that, get access, and we'll continue the video and help you run fast.